Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into some really fantastic research material from Dr. Sudhyendra S.G. It's all designed to help teachers and educators unpack the magic behind digital compression. So let's get started with a little puzzle.
Okay, take a look at this. On the left, we've got a high-quality photo. It's 3.2 megabytes. On the right, same photo, but it's been compressed down to just 320 kilobytes. That's literally 10 times smaller. And yet, look at them. To our eyes, they look pretty much identical. So what is going on here?
And that, right there, is the big question we're tackling today. How can you represent what looks like the exact same information, but use so many fewer bits of data? How is this digital wizardry even possible?
Well, as it turns out, there's not just one single magic trick. There are actually two main strategies. Two really distinct and fascinating paths we can take to make our digital files smaller, our downloads faster, and our whole digital world way more efficient.
But before we go down those paths, let's just make sure we're all on the same page. Compression, at its heart, is just the process of encoding information using fewer bits than the original version. And the goals are super practical: save storage space on our phones and computers, and speed up how fast we can send stuff over the internet.
And here they are, our two main paths. On one side, you've got lossless compression. This is a perfect bit-for-bit copy. You can get every single piece of original data back. Think of it like a perfect digital archive. Then, on the other side, you have lossy compression. This is a smaller, good enough version where some data is actually thrown away for good. You can think of this one as a really smart shortcut.
All right, let's explore that first path, lossless. How in the world can we make a file smaller without losing a single tiny bit of the original information?
You know, one of the simplest and honestly most elegant ways to do this is with something called run-length encoding, or RLE for short. The whole idea is just to find long strings of repeating data, we call those runs, and just replace them with a simple count of what repeated and how many times.
Let's use a really simple example from the source material's Pac-Man grid activity. Imagine this is just one row of pixels in an image. Uncompressed, you'd store it as yellow, 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 then white, white.
So here's what RLE does. It looks at that row and says, hey, I see 5 yellows all in a row. So it just writes down 5, Y. Then it sees 2 whites, so it writes down 2, W. And that's it. Instead of storing 7 pieces of information, we've stored it as 4. And the best part is, you can perfectly rebuild the original from this. It's simple, but it's effective.
Okay, so now let's level up to a more sophisticated lossless technique, Huffman coding. This takes a totally different approach. It's not looking for runs, it's looking for frequency. The core idea is just brilliant. Give shorter codes to the things that show up all the time, and give longer codes to the things that are rare.
For example, let's say we scan our image data and we find these little 2-pixel blocks. We see that the YY block is super common. It shows up 4 times. But the BY and W blocks, they're pretty rare. They only show up once. This frequency count is the absolute key to making Huffman coding work.
So how do we actually turn that frequency table into a code? Well, we built something called a Huffman tree. And the way it's built is just clever. You start by taking the 2 rarest items, in our case, BY and WW, and you combine them. By always combining the least frequent things first, you're basically pushing them further and further down the tree, which means their code path gets longer. You just keep doing that until everything is connected into one big tree. Then you label the branches, and what you're left with is amazing. The most common block, YY, now has the shortest code, and the rare stuff has the longest. It's an incredibly elegant way to create the most efficient codes possible.
And here's the most important part to remember. No matter how complex that tree looks, this is still a perfect lossless method. When you decode it, you recover the exact original file. Every single bit. Nothing is ever lost.
All right, so we've mastered the art of the perfect copy. But to really understand that photo from the beginning of our talk, we have to go down our second path, lossy compression. Now, this isn't about perfection. This is about being clever. It's about exploiting the built-in limitations of our own human senses.
Let's talk about audio. The MP3 format is basically a master of psychoacoustics, the psychology of sound. It uses this amazing principle called auditory masking. So, if you have a loud drum crash at the exact same moment as a tiny quiet triangle ding, your brain literally won't even process the triangle sound. So the MP3 encoder just says, well, no one's going to miss that, and it just throws that data away. It's genius. It also gets rid of frequencies that are too high for us to hear anyway.
JPEGs do a very similar thing, but for our eyes. The image gets broken up into tiny 8x8 pixel squares. Then it does a bit of math to separate the data into broad strokes of color versus the really fine, high-frequency details. And here's the trick. It aggressively throws away a ton of information about those super fine details, because it knows our eyes just aren't that sensitive to them anyway.
And then you get to video, with formats like MPEG, and it takes this idea even further. I mean, why would you send a whole new picture 30 times every second, when honestly, most of the screen, like the background, hasn't changed at all? So instead, it just reuses chunks of the last frame. It only sends the data for what's different, or it'll just send a little instruction that says, hey, that block of pixels just moved from here to there. It's an incredible saving.
So, now we have these two incredibly powerful toolkits, right? Lossless for when you need perfection, and lossy for when good enough is good enough. The real art is knowing when to use which. It's all about making the right trade-off.
And this is a really fantastic activity from Dr. G's material that makes it all clear. Think about it. A medical X-ray? Oh yeah, you need every single pixel to be perfect. That has to be lossless. What about a class vlog you're going to upload to the web? Small file size for easy sharing is way more important than perfect quality. That's a job for lossy. A company logo? It needs those sharp lines and solid colors preserved exactly, so you go lossless. And of course, computer source code. Change one single bit, and the whole program could crash. It absolutely, positively has to be lossless.
And this brings us to a final, really big thought, a great question for any classroom discussion. As our digital universe just keeps expanding, we're constantly facing this trade-off. What's ultimately more valuable? The perfect bit-for-bit preservation of our information, or fast, efficient, easy access for everyone? It's a choice we're all making every single day. Thanks so much for joining this explainer.